Absolutely tearing this apart right now. It looks fantastic. After I got the tires put on, I realized I have to do some little bit of fender trimming here, like not much actually. The suspension compression is in the direction this way, which means I kind of have to take this back just a little bit. And I'm hoping to actually have it in a slightly lifted stance actually for its final setup. Kind of want to have it like, I don't know, high on the shocks, if you will. You know what I mean by that? And, oh, the dirt's falling out of it all over the place. So anyways, the story is we're going to shred this thing right now. And we're going to install this power system here, which I just stole right out of my Yeti score. So this is MambaMaxPro. We've got a 4600 Castle 1406. This is the 540 size can, and of course it's good for what they say is 3-cell lipo. And then on the back it says it's 100,000 RPM max. So if you do any kind of basic math, 4600 kV times 3-cell is not going to take us anywhere near 100,000 RPM. So I'm thinking we're going to run it more like 4-cell to start and see how that goes. And if we don't manage to bust everything completely into 1,000 pieces by then, we'll probably bump it up to 5-cell. 5-cell will take us right near the 100,000 RPM range. 6-cell will take us just a little bit over 100,000 RPM. You know, it's I'm trying to fling stuff here, okay? So it's the flinger. We're going to either make a really big mess and parts will fly everywhere, or it will stay together and we'll have so much fun that there will be no excuse for everybody not to try this. Anyway, let's tear this down. I realize the winch line is sticking right out here. I'm pretty sure that's going to be in the way any second. And if I remember how to get this off, yeah, I mean, I know I have to do this, but I think, oh no, the back slides. Okay, so I should be able to just pull the fenders out and disconnect it from that, and then actually just slide it backwards. Although I put inner fenders on it in the front, so this might be a lot harder than I think. It should just pull off. It looks like it's really stuck on there for some reason, and shouldn't be. So I'm gonna blame the inner fenders. Maybe I have to take these out first. There. These are the Lexan RC 4-wheel drive inner fenders that were used on the TF2. So, you know, I fit them into the CMAX build here, and they fit okay. The nice thing about those is that they're just so flexible that it's really no big deal to get them off. Okay, well that's free there, so I don't really understand why this isn't coming off. The body's supposed to slide backwards once you take those off. It's supposed to slide backwards off of the frame rail here. Oh, I have a screw in it. Okay. And there's no screw on that side, which is why that absolutely befoozled me. I'm gonna rip this screw out of here, and we will slide that right off. So yeah, I guess the screw is a good idea because there you go, see? Man, that just comes right off of there. I mean, like, slides right off of there. So the screw is a good idea, I guess, for some kind of, you know, safety thing, so the body doesn't actually fall off without you knowing. Here we go. Yeah, this is like the coolest race truck ever. So I'm really happy I have all this metal cage work and stuff on here, because the thing's going to get flipped and beat, I'm pretty sure. And this is solid. It's well, it's not solid, it's actually tube. This is all 3/16 steel tube. And then this part here is 1/8 solid instead of tube, because I don't even think I can get a tube that small. That would be anywhere worth welding on. So anyway, that's that. Now we've got ourselves a race truck, and this is what I'm talking about right here. I think I can get this console cover out. I think there's a magnet over here, and then to figure out what's holding it on the other side, because I want to get into the tunnel and drop the transmission out. I guess I don't really have to do it from the front, but anyway, I might. Okay, so that's just screwed on, so that's done. So this thing actually is a severely modified version of the SMT race truck console that was made by Exclusive RC, and I moved a bunch of stuff around on it. I liked the way the components were, and I liked the components that were there, but I was never really a fan of the height of it, because of the SMT being a much taller truck. It didn't fit very well in the race Blazer. There we go. But of course, as soon as I took that off, it was great. So I moved a whole bunch of stuff. I cut off the bottom of the thing, and then let me turn that around. So I basically made it shorter. So I took this part off, because this sits on top of the console cover. And then I moved the gauge pod that was, I think it was down here, and I moved it up here. So that helped to kind of get it into range, because the dude was sitting a little higher. The sticker's falling off, but other than that, it's all like LED lit and everything. It's really cool. It's pretty cool stuff. I like how that thing turned out. Now, I get all these wrenches out of the way here. Now, right now, this is a Hobby Wing 1060. I can take this Dean's thing off of here. I'm pretty sure I'm going to disable the winch, because this is now going to be race truck forever, so needing the winch is like, nope, don't need that. I didn't even realize there was still a switch on the back here. That's really cool. So there's a switch. What does all this stuff here do? There's a spare plug for some reason that I don't even know why it's there. Maybe it was for rear lights or something at one point, but not being used. And then all of this stuff here can all come out. This was a Hobby Wing 1060 ESC. Oh, I see. That's probably power for the lights. And yeah. And then this is like an extra power, because I've got them doubled up here for some reason. So this is just another power lead I could use for taillights or something. Let me get this winch controller off of here. Now the battery tray is flipped down on this. I think I showed you that already, but these, when the body's on, there's set screws here, right here, that actually hold the body. They pin the body on, because the RC four-wheel drive bodies have the side mount pins, or screws, I guess, that we would use when they're on the original TF2 chassis. So I put set screws in here. I put another set screw in the back hole here, and then in the front, I almost tightened that screw. So basically what you have is this drop-down tray. So you spread the body out, and then you can drop this down and put your battery right here. And I'm going to do that to the other side as well, so I can hopefully get 2 batteries on here. And then I'll be able to run, 3, 4 cell, whatever I happen to want at the day. Let me get a screwdriver and pop that thing out of there. This is a little bit overkill, but I'm pretty sure that this thing is just put in here with hot glue or shoe goo. The battery tray is that center fuel cell battery box thing that we made up. It's on Shapeways. The servo is glued into an extension here because it wasn't quite long enough. Yeah, there's just hot glue everywhere. So this is the cool thing. Of course, I'm taking all this apart, right? But basically, if you use hot glue, it doesn't fall off by itself, like this. It doesn't fall off by itself, but if you really have to, you can peel it right off the wire. So there's no damage at all to the wiring here at all, because the hot glue really cures kind of like, almost like plastic. It's not really glue, it's just kind of hot plastic, if you will. And so, yeah, you can really easily peel the stuff right off. And then of course your parts are all serviceable, right? They don't move if they don't have to move, but when you need them to move, they come right out. I think that's great. Winch and throttle is this one, and there we go. So, and I guess that's the servo extension for the front. Got a whole bunch of glue all over that, keep it together. Now, there's the feed for the motor. I guess I can pop this thing off here. This, I'm sure, is just shoe glued on. It's usually what I do with all these electronics that have to be bounced around all the time. Shoe glue the crap out of them. And there we go. Now, shoe glue sticks a lot better than hot glue. So I recommend you use shoe glue in a place where it's really going to get beat on, or you really don't want it falling off. But, because this is tough stuff, man, wow. But on the same token, I mean, there you go. So, no permanent damage to anything. And I got the winch controller, this is a Heyoke relay winch controller. I pulled that right off of this nylon. I had to really yank it off with a screwdriver, but you can get it off, and then it's clean, and you're basically starting over. So no damage, no harm, no foul, you know what I mean? Winch controller's out. We're going to, you see how that falls down now, eh? That's actually a little easier to see this way. So we're gonna drop the drive shafts out of it here now. Let me get my little wrench for that. This has Junfac drive shafts on it. They work great. They're surprisingly tough. Tougher than I thought they were ever gonna be. A lot of guys have snapped the ball cups off of them. I have not snapped the ball cups off of them yet, so for now, at least for now, I'm pretty happy with the way that they've held up. And this thing hasn't had 4-cell brushless on it, but boy, it's had an awful lot of use, man. This is an old truck. So this has not been babied at all. And I can get into the top of these here. So I'm actually just taking these 2 set screws out right here because I can get at it all. So I could also do this from the bottom, but at this point I might as well just do it from the top. I'm sitting right here. I'm gonna pull those right out instead of leaving them half out. So that should be easy to get off. Yeah, see, they just fall off now. Not much wear on these either. I mean, you can see the slide has been used a little bit here. I kind of wore the finish off them a bit. But they're nowhere near dead. The rear one's got a little bit of corrosion on it, but nothing serious. That wipes right off. And I should tell you that I lubricate these all the time. So I usually use fluid film or something very similar to fluid film to lubricate the drive shaft joints and anything else that's actually in motion at all. Got to get those 2 screws out for the back of the transfer case. And just snap those right out of there. Now, there was some discussion on the comments on the first video. You know, how is this thing going to hold up to all this power? Well, I have a couple thoughts about that. First of all, I'm not the first guy to do this. Like guys like Sean Young and stuff have been putting brushless stuff on these LRT2 transmission setups for quite a long time, actually. So what I'm doing is not new to the transmission. It's new to me, but it's not new to the transmission. I really don't have any doubt that it's going to hold up. The only thing that I don't know is how the drive shafts I think the axle housings are going to bust first. And that was my reply on the first video comment, was I'm actually thinking it's the axle housings. So I think the drivetrain is going to survive, but I just don't know about the axle housings. And the only reason, it's not because of the power, it's because of the shock, the impact shock, right? So the truck's going to be screaming at such an incredible rate of speed. It's going to be flying down the dirt and just screaming, or in the air or whatever. And every time you hit something, there's going to be so much shock on the front of the truck just from the impact. I have a feeling that that's just going to snap the housing off because it's going so fast at that point, right? And my guess is that that's where the failure is going to show up. So what I did is I took the cross member off right here. The transmission is just flopping in there now because the motor plate actually is keyed into the frame rail. So what I can do now, if there's enough give here, I'm going to find out. But if there's enough give, I'm going to spread out the frame rails a little bit and try to get that transmission out. There we go. Perfect. Just like that. All right. So we're pretty much done with all that. I'm going to put this thing away. Just put that in a giant pile there. And this will be the rest of our attention here today. Sweep all the dirt off the bench here. Wow, man, that thing is shedding pounds of sand here. My guess is that this motor cover, yeah, I was right, it's been glued on. See if I can get some of these screws out and loosen it off a little bit. And if I can split the case a little bit, I can probably pop it off. I shoe glued the oil pan on to keep it from sliding around, because I remember it actually moving around quite a bit. There we go. I may have to knife that right off. May have to cut off the shoe goo here. There's a couple of little dabs on there. So here's a question. Do I bother putting another scale engine cover on this thing, or just leave it off? I mean, the hood, I'm probably gonna have to bolt the hood down just to actually keep it together, because I'm guessing the hood is gonna fly off. So this is the GCM V8 engine block with our Hugger headers. This thing is just a great little engine. It does the job. There's not a lot of detail on it. It's kind of like a cross flow manifold. It's just a basic V8 front distributor. So, you know, big block Oldsmobile, whatever you want to use it for, you can use it as a Ford. Lots of options there. I'm going to put that little tiny bolt back in before I lose it. I already lost it. And yeah, so you can use this as a Ford or some kind of Oldsmobile or something if you want. But the thing about this is it's proportionally very small. So this is only as long as the engine can. You can see that there's really no extra space here at all. It's just jammed in there. That's like all that it can do to stay in there. Now this truck was running on a 35 turn Holmes. This is a Trailmaster Sport. I really like these actually. They're a pretty decent little motor. Sealed can, but ball bearings and all that other good stuff. And runs really good on this Hobby Wing 1060 that was in it. I always ran them on a 3-cell, so it had a little bit of wheel jam on it. Not much, but a little bit. Just enough, you know, to say that it's got some decent jam. I'm going to grab a wrench and one of these little power wrenches here. That'll just speed up the tearing apart process, you know what I mean? Rip this off of here now. Oddly enough, this thing was being held together with 4 screws instead of, I think it's 10. Probably because it probably got assembled early in the prototype stage, if you will, and then it just never got taken back apart. Look at that. This thing has been underwater several times and it's absolutely clean inside. That's shocking. There's a very, very small amount of moisture in there, or corrosion, if you will, at all. Now, my guess is the transfer case will be a little worse for wear because I see that the top screw hole here is not plugged anymore, so I'm guessing that there's a bunch of dirt in there. We'll find out in a second, but that's my guess. Could be wrong. Wow, look at that. That is completely clean. Absolutely, totally clean. That's amazing. So, this is the LRT2. Of course, it's a GCM transmission that comes with the CMAX kits, along with Delta now, and it's very, very popular for SCX10 and TF2 conversions. And I'm really surprised, actually. I mean, I drove this truck a lot of miles, and I know what I drove it through and how I drove it, but this is in really good condition. So for now, I'm going to actually just close that back up. I'm going to re-grease it all at the end, but I want to get this motor plate switched over to the new style. Now the case, as you see, there's 2 pieces, but they actually key together, so there's no way for dirt to get through the seal here. There's no rubber required. You don't have to do anything fancy. And then there's 1 bolt that attaches through the cases to attach the 2 case halves together, and all it does is keep the case from spreading. That's really all it does. You don't have to crank it down. There's no fancy, you know, technology in this thing at all, man. That's just solid, proper, machined, mated joint. You know, that's all it is. It's just, those 2 parts are actually machined at the same time by the same tools in the same machine operation. So the match between the cases is exact every single time. Every case is matched to its case. That's how they're made. So this thing feels pretty good. Feels like I could probably grease it up a little bit, but it feels pretty good. So I'm happy about that. And I'm going to get a new motor plate here and run this on a new motor plate with no slot. So this is the original motor plate with the slot in it. The slot allows you to adjust the pinion mesh, which is completely unnecessary in most cases because we give you a pinion with the transmission. So if you use the pinion that we give you, there's no adjustment required. All the gears are already there. They fit. That's perfect. There's no messing around. You can't get it wrong because the new motor plate doesn't have any slot. So very easy. I'm going to get one. There's the motor plate kit. Looks like this. And we'll saw this open here. For what it's worth, we might as well give this thing a new bearing and everything. Couple new screws. Need some Loctite. I always use this stuff. This is Permatex Blue Medium Strength Gel. It's a blue sticky gel. I love this stuff. I love it to death. It's great. I think I need a 2.5 for these sockets. So basically all I got to do now is figure out what orientation to put the wires. I need to make sure that the motor wires are on the transmission in some kind of an appropriate direction. You know what I mean? So that they're up or sideways or whatever it is. It looks like I could get away with probably left side, because if the motor is in front and the wires come down the left side like this, I'll have the wires opposite the T-case. So I think I'm going to set up the motor so that the wires can come down opposite the T-case. This already has drive shafts and stuff, and I don't want the wires to get in the way, so I'm going to do that. We'll find a set of bolt holes on here that actually will fit kind of a side hole. I think like that. I'm thinking like that. It's kind of like 45 degrees sideways kind of thing. So we'll put some blue on here. Loctite those screws right in there. Nice that this system doesn't have a sensor. It sounds funny, but the thing is, I'm just gonna go fast with it. I'm really just gonna beat the crap out of it. So the less that there is to worry about, the better, as far as I'm concerned. You crank those down. Hopefully they'll seal up quick with the Loctite. It won't fall out. Got a brand new bearing. Put the bearing in there. There we go. Good. Basically we got to get the gear, steal the gear off of this one. Now, which wrench is that these days? Oh, there it is. So rip that off of here. These I always blue Loctite these. Always. And they never ever come off. It's just so fantastic. And it's not permanently sealed either. You can get it off. You won't believe how far that thing actually rolled. I flung it off of there and it went halfway to the moon. Okay. Drop this on. All right. Now, the way to set this up, as far as height goes, because there's only 2 screws, you can't get the height wrong. But what you got to do is take this first piece, the first gear set, and drop it in there, because you want to make sure the pinion gear is all the way out on that first spur gear. You know what I mean? So I'm going to slide this back out like that. So I want the pinion gear to match up with that. Pull that out a little bit more. And there's a little bit of float in the motor shaft you can see there. So what you don't want to do is have it out far enough that the set screw is actually rubbing on the gear, because that'll just mash the teeth out of the gear and it'll make a horrible noise forever. Don't do that. Okay, wrench. I'm going to put some nice thick heavy Loctite on this set screw. Pull that back out. So the old stuff's kind of hardened right on there. That's amazing. I love that. And then we'll get some new blue on there. I like to goop it up pretty heavy, and then I actually roll the set screw. Roll it, and roll it right into the hole. So there's a big blob of Loctite gel in the bottom of the hole. That's my method. And then when you tighten it down, it actually squishes out of the flat through the gear. You don't have to go too tight on it either, you know. So we're done. That's it. That first section is done. And the gear mesh can't be wrong, because there's only 2 holes machined in the plate, so you can't get that gear mesh wrong. As long as the end spacing is good, you're good to go. Now what we're going to do is pull this transmission apart and actually grease it up. I'm going to lay out something clean here so I can take all this apart. And I don't usually Loctite the transmission hardware, but this time I might, considering the speeds that I'm attempting to travel. Okay, let's get this pulled apart. And we'll just take it all apart, the whole thing. That's the idler. I'm going to check the bearing on this thing. Wow, these are in perfect shape too. That's amazing. Can't believe the miles I put on this thing, and they weren't easy miles either. Man, the bearings are perfect on it. It's like they're like expertly broken in. You know what I mean? That's how they feel. That is super cool. Take that little pin out. That's the drive pin for that gear. One of the things that I'm expecting to break is these little drive pins. They sit in the gear to actually transfer the power from the shaft into the gear, and I'm fully expecting to bust off a pin just because of the amount of sheer force that's going to be on it. Now what I'm going to do at the speed control settings is seriously cut them down. So I'm going to trim down I want the speed, but I don't necessarily want like the high current snap, you know what I mean? I'm going to cut the braking way down so it doesn't have any flash current on braking. I'm going to, or break the thing in half. I mean, the braking can be just as strong as the takeoff, you know what I mean? So I don't want to bust everything. I do want to have fun, but I want to have fun in some kind of a semi-sane manner without having severe carnage constantly. Anyway, there's that. I like that. We'll pull apart these sections here one at a time, and then we'll reassemble it with some fresh grease in it. Should be great. And we'll rip these off here. There's a little bit of dirt in it, but I swear the last time I drove it in a pond, it seems to have cleaned itself. It's been in the river. It's been around, man. This thing has been around. Look at that. It's super clean in there. There's a little bit of grease flung in there just from the gears going around, but that's not bad at all. Pretty clean, man. Pretty clean. Pretty cool. So, I'm going to get this whole thing apart, slam a whole bunch of grease in it, and we'll have a discussion about it once I've got the thing assembled again. So that's good. I'm happy about that. What I'm not happy about is I have an extra bearing left over and I don't know why. So it's probably that middle case section. And oh, that might be the old motor plate. Oh no, it's still in there. Okay, well obviously I did something wrong here, so I'm going to pull this case half apart because I think I left a bearing out of it. Always good to know. And usually good to know before you put the assembly back together. But, you know, take what you get. I bet you I can't get that off now because there's another gear in the way. Oh no, it's a screw. There we go. Yep, I left the bearing off right there. That would have been like the fastest catastrophe ever. Highly recommend you put all the bearings back in when you do your assembly. There we go. That should run an awful lot better with the gears going around in the right place. Yep. Put this one here in. Okay, now I'm going to do a little tidy up here. I hear this all the time. I got to talk about this because I hear this all the time. One of the comments I get a lot is the discussion goes something like this. I want to get, I have an RC four-wheel drive transmission. I have their scale transmission, and I want to put your LRT on it. And we don't actually make that kit anymore. We used to make that for a long time. And the LRT case is the same. The case parts are the same. And then these two gears are the same. But everything else doesn't fit. So that's a pretty major disappointment for a lot of people because they kind of count on us supplying a part for an RC four-wheel drive truck, which we don't anymore. And the reason we don't make them anymore is because the demand is really low. We made hundreds of them at the beginning when RC four-wheel drive had just come out with this. We didn't have our own transmission. We do now. And at the time there was no other way to get a married T-case onto a scale transmission, so we made a kit for it, which was the LRT and then the LRT2. This is an LRT2. Yeah, we don't make the kit anymore, so unfortunately you can't just buy this from GCM and then throw our tranny in the garbage and use the RC four-wheel drive one. They actually aren't the same. They look very, very similar, but they're simply not the same, and the internals aren't the same. The gear ratio is 43% different. It's 40% different between ours. Ours is a much slower driving transmission than the RC four-wheel drive, which is I think why they're so popular with the TF2 conversions now, because you can really get the gearing down on those trucks and it's a lot of fun to drive them. I think we're ready to go here. We got to just drop a couple of set screws in here. I want to block these two holes here, so let me get some set screws for that. They're tiny, but they work amazing. I'm going to goop these up with the blue thread locker. Really goop them up good. And again, I'm just rolling that in there. There we go. So we're going to slap that Castle motor right on here, and we should be ready to put that install back into the vehicle. I'm going to change the way that that's installed quite a bit, because the electronics are all going to have to get redone, and I need to give that some thought on the chassis before this actually gets installed. So today's video is going to close up with this section, and then see, I just reused my thing. Now I have a brand new one. All the dirt's at the bottom. Yay. So that's ready to go. I'm gonna slam this thing right on here. Actually, I'm gonna grease that first. Gotta get grease on that one. That's the first gear in the setup, so it really needs to get a pretty good hosing. We'll just goop that up real good. I like using this thin white grease. I use this a lot. It doesn't slow down the transmissions much, but it seems to do an exceptionally good job of lubing the gears, and even after years of use, when you take them apart, there's still a really small white film. So I'm just glad to see that they're doing their job. I'm glad to see that the grease is actually doing its job. You can see it gets sprayed around in the tunnel, in the transmission, sort of gap there in the bell housing. But the thing is, it's still working. It does the job. So that's the good news. We're going to drop this in here. Obviously, I'm only greasing one of the gears in the pair, because there's simply no reason to grease them both. That's why. There's absolutely no reason. So the gears are going to make contact. That is so smooth. It's just unbelievable. I think when we get some 4S power on this thing, that's going to smooth right out. Pretty sure of it. And it's really nice right now. So I got a bunch of these screws left over, and I found them in a drawer like a year ago. I always kind of wondered what they were for, but I'm pretty sure they're actually out of this, because we've had this truck here since 3 years maybe, something like that, and these have never been installed. So I'm definitely going to put the rest of the bolts in here. So that pretty much wraps up our episode here today. We've got this switched over. I'm really glad to see the transmission was in really good shape. With some fresh grease, I think it'll actually survive. And we're going to use our Castle system there, probably on 4-cell. And kind of hope for the best. Thanks for watching. Look forward to episode number 3. If you feel this is awesome, feel free to share it on your local forums or your channels. Give it a thumbs up on YouTube and subscribe to the channel if you're new, and we'll hope to give you a whole bunch more scale trucking content that'll keep you entertained. See you later.